Hello everyone and welcome to an all-new episode of PlayStation Megabits. I am your host Adam Leonard, and boy is there a lot to discuss this month in the world of PlayStation. The big news obviously is acquisitions. PlayStation recently acquired Bungie. Xbox recently acquired Activision. Big potential ramifications for both Call of Duty and Destiny. But the good news is I don't give a about any of those games. I would like to talk to you about Final Fantasy VII, please. Oh, I'm just being silly with you. We're going to talk about all that kind of stuff, but in a limited capacity because I really don't give a crap about Destiny or Call of Duty. But there are some pretty big things to talk about, specifically with this Activision acquisition, because the weirdness here is that Xbox now owns the rights to Crash Bandicoot, which was PlayStation's first real mascot character, and that's just weird, right? That's just weird. I honestly think this is a good thing, even as a PlayStation primary player, because Activision has really crapped the bed in recent years with games that have been under their belt. They've just let everything slide, and all of these studios have just been Call of Duty support studios. So I'm excited for Toys for Bob to potentially get back into making Spyro and Crash Bandicoot games, and maybe they'll head their way to the PlayStation platform. It's certainly not unheard of for Microsoft to play ball with other studios. Speaking of playing ball with other studios, MLB The Show, which is a PlayStation Studios game, last year it made a lot of news because that game ended up not only on Xbox but on Game Pass. And this year it's also going to be on Game Pass, which isn't that big of a deal. But what I find really fascinating about MLB The Show this year is that it is being ported to the Nintendo Switch of all platforms. I'm no developer, clearly. I'm a mid-40-year-old man who sits in my basement talking to my phone about video games. To me, the big thing is not so much that this is going multi-platform, but there really has to be a concerted effort to port a PlayStation 5/PlayStation 4 title down to the hardware capabilities of the Nintendo Switch. That's a big deal to me. Jim Ryan was recently interviewed after the Bungie acquisition, and he was talking about multi-platform games. And he said, quote-unquote, PlayStation is starting to go multi-platform, which is just a sentence that I never really expected anybody in the PlayStation camp to say. Destiny is going to stay multi-platform, that has been confirmed, but MLB The Show I think is a really interesting case about where PlayStation might be headed. The fact that they are designing games specifically for the Nintendo Switch platform, to me that says that there's going to be some sort of movement about where games in the PlayStation catalog end up. Now, I don't think we're going to see God of War on the Nintendo Switch and things like that, but some of these more broader games, these broader appeal games that could potentially be distributed out to the masses, games like a Destiny, which has traditionally been a multi-platform, multiplayer game, and then MLB The Show. Baseball is obviously universal to all platforms, regardless of what the specific game it is. I think PlayStation has got an eye on doing things a little bit differently going forward, and this obviously stinks of Xbox's influence on the video game industry, which is a good thing. It really is a good thing. The fact that PlayStation is releasing games on PC right now is a direct result of and where the market really seems to want games to be more accessible. Microsoft has made this formula their cornerstone at Xbox is play our games wherever it makes sense for you. I'm really interested to see the approach that PlayStation brings to that concept. If they go full in with the rumors of their new services that they're refreshing, I don't know. This is going to be a really telling year for the future of PlayStation and how they adapt to Xbox's killer 2021. They really had a fantastic year of doing things their own way. PlayStation really needs to kind of adapt and not necessarily play the same game that Xbox is, but really adjust their forecasts and what they want to do to impact the video game industry above and beyond just their exclusive AAA blockbuster titles, which they've been known for the longest time. One corner that I think PlayStation is primed to really exploit their differences in the industry is in the realm of VR. Now, since the last episode of PlayStation Megabits, PlayStation unveiled that PSVR 2 is happening. They have a marquee game in Horizon Call of the Mountain. This is going to be an all-new VR experience in the Horizon Zero Dawn / Forbidden West universe. They are expanding that world thanks to some of their acquisitions of VR studios. All indications seem to be that PSVR 2 will be hitting this holiday, which means we can expect to get more details and hopefully a look at some of these upcoming PSVR 2 video games at Summer Game Bang, which starts this June. Yeah, don't worry about E3, don't worry about Summer Game Fest. Just remember Summer Game Bang right here at Megadabs. I really think they have an opportunity with VR to offer a product that is not available on the other easily attainable console market. Obviously there's Quest and Vive, but PlayStation's VR platform has been an extremely accessible place and a cost-effective place for players to get into the VR scene. And hopefully they price that PSVR 2 just right. The ease of getting into these games, the fact that they're going to have some really great key Sony PlayStation franchises as VR experiences. They've already expressed interest in having some of their bigger titles be also available as VR experiences. And of course, we're all waiting to see what Team Asobi is working on. Astro's Playroom was a remarkable game to kick off the PlayStation 5, and I would expect they'd have nothing short of an amazing Astro's Rescue Mission 2 to kick off the VR 2. I'm just very excited about this platform. I've been playing a lot of VR recently. I'm actually playing Wanderer, which is a time-traveling adventure puzzle game. You can look for my review for that later on in a couple of weeks. So I'm really excited about VR and the potential of VR. We're going to be getting Moss 2 later this year. So it's PlayStation is starting to warm the players back up to the idea of getting into that virtual realm, and it's not going to be very long before we start seeing what they've got up their sleeves for this second iteration of PlayStation virtual reality. It's very exciting. What I'm really excited to talk to all of you about today is Final Fantasy VII, which is celebrating its 25th anniversary of the original PlayStation 1 classic, which, makes me feel incredibly, soul-crushingly old. But there's so much to celebrate with Final Fantasy VII. Obviously, we've got the upcoming Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2. Woo! So that's a lot to say. Coming for the PlayStation 5, we expect to hear more about that. And in fact, that was confirmed in a recent live stream celebrating this Final Fantasy VII anniversary. The developers plan to unveil Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 this year. I am extremely excited. Final Fantasy VII Remake is one of my favorite games on the PS4 and PS5 with the Integrate expansion. And I can't wait to see what they're going to do with Remake Part 2. My mind is just like, I can't wrap my head around where they're going with this game. So excited. But in addition to that, there's obviously these other Final Fantasy VII projects that are currently in development. There is the First Soldier, which is a mobile-only battle royale game, which they decided to do. There's also another mobile game which I'm hoping gets ported to consoles, because Ever Crisis kind of takes everything off the shelf from Final Fantasy VII and puts it into a repackaged breakdown and retelling in a more 2D traditional RPG fashion. It's got the original Final Fantasy VII game in there, Dirge of Cerberus, For Crisis, Crisis Core in there. They're going to retell all of it in this game, and it seems like such a waste to just trap that on the mobile platform. But the real meat of this story is that Tetsuo Nomura, who is the original character designer on Final Fantasy VII, and he's kind of the creative lead on this expanded universe, has said that more projects have already begun that we don't know about in the Final Fantasy VII realm. This is just wild to me. We've got all of these huge projects. These aren't small games. Ever Crisis is retelling the entire lineage of Final Fantasy VII stories. Remake is retelling, rebooting, and going off in an entirely new direction for modern day consoles. That's a huge undertaking, but they're not satisfied with that. They're giving us more Final Fantasy VII projects. I'm hoping for some offshoot games. I would love to play like an action game where you take control of Barret, or maybe even like a fighter. I'd take a Final Fantasy VII fighter. Cloud and Sephiroth are incredibly fun to play in Smash. I would love for them to put those characters in a new modern 3D fighter. I think that would be amazing. Just don't know. I don't know where they're going with Final Fantasy Fantasy VII, but I love the fact that they're rededicating themselves to this staple of RPGs. I am a player who loves nostalgia. I'm very excited at the prospect of backwards compatibility on PlayStation. So to go back and revisit a story and characters that I loved from my upbringing with video games in a new modern way, this is the kind of stuff that hits me right here. This is why I play on PlayStation. It's that honoring of their legacy and the games that have made the franchise and the brand so great. Square Enix obviously has a really good relationship with PlayStation. Remake is a console exclusive for the platform as of right now, so one would expect that the next Final Fantasy VII project, if it's coming to consoles, we'll see it first on a PlayStation State of Play. That's all I've got for you this month, guys, on PlayStation and Megabits. Stay tuned, because next week we've got an all-new episode of Megadads Live, the podcast, where we will be having more in-depth conversations about all these acquisitions and all these moves that both PlayStation and Microsoft are making. And I'll find a way to talk about some more Final Fantasy VII as well. I appreciate you stopping by. Thank you for your time. Make sure before you go that you like this video and subscribe to the channel for more PlayStation videos from me. And we will see you next month on an all-new episode of PlayStation Megabits.